So I wanted to do a video talking about living abroad and like moving abroad and my experience with it and just my tips on that. So one question I get all the time is people who want to either learn a language or they want to go study abroad. You know, be it in university or college or whatever, or if they're doing some kind of vocational training where you have the opportunity to go abroad. And I think going abroad to either study or to learn a language is an absolute enrichment to your personality, to your whole life, to your educational advancement as well. I totally encourage people to, if they have the opportunity or if they have the desire to go abroad from their country and see other places or learn a new language, I think you should totally try to take that offer and do it, because it's so enriching. You not only grow as a person, you grow immensely as a person, you grow much more independent, you learn how to totally stand on your own 2 feet. And not only that, but especially if you're going to learn a language, you're gonna learn a new language, which is going to help you, especially in the job, later on, if you're applying for jobs. If you speak more than one language, that's going to give you a big advantage over other people. Nowadays, depending on where you live, learning a second or even a third language is often a prerequisite for a lot of employment opportunities. So I guess there's different ways that you can do it. I mean, one way that's, I think quite popular now, especially if you're going to university or college, to take up the opportunity to study abroad for, often it's either for a semester or for 2 semesters, so a year. And I don't know, if all universities offer this, but many do. And you'll probably have to speak to your, if your university offers that kind of opportunity, it's usually they've set up a program in partnership with other universities in other countries. Basically what happens is they have a quota of certain amount of students that they are allowed to send to that university to study there for a year, and in return that university sends a certain quota to your university, and so it's kind of an exchange. Now if your university does offer those kind of programs, then the best thing to do is to go to your guidance counselor, or if they have some kind of place where that is organized. In my university, I went to McGill, and they had a special office set up for study abroad programs, like student exchange programs, and it was an application process. You had to have pretty good grades, so if you weren't doing well in school, then you probably wouldn't have had a good chance of getting in, just because they don't want you to fall behind on courses, especially if you're going to be exchanging maybe to a country that's not in the same language. But sometimes what you can do is if you only speak English and you're not really interested in learning a new language, then you can either exchange to an English-speaking university. I know that even in Cairo and other places, there's English-speaking universities, so you could do that. Or you could just exchange to Australia or to England or whatever, because you're gonna have to keep up with your course load. When you exchange to the other university, you'll be expected to take classes there. So if the classes are in a completely different language, you're not going to be able to do the coursework, obviously. So usually what happens if you do exchange, to, let's say you want to exchange to France, you'll probably have to take some kind of a proficiency test before being accepted. They'll usually make you take some kind of proficiency exam, just so that they can test to see what your level, what your speaking skill is, and if you'll be able to actually, do the university work there. Because I personally did a university exchange as well, but I kind of organized it myself. I set it up. I went exchange to a university here in Switzerland, and I basically applied as a normal student. I applied there, I got accepted, and then I told my university in Canada that I wanted to do this, and it's basically you take I think it's called a sabbatical or something, or a year away, where you don't register for classes, but your spot is still reserved, so that when you come back to your normal school, that you can just resume as normal. And then basically what happened is when I came back from Switzerland from that university, I had to submit all my coursework and stuff, and then they had to get all the credits approved. So that's how you can do it yourself. I mean, you'll have to find out how it works with your own school. Each school is different. In Europe especially, often it's required as part of your degree to it's called Erasmus. I don't know what it is in other languages, but it's in many parts of degrees, it's required for you to do exchange in another university in another country. So it's quite common to do this like in college. So if if you're interested in doing that, like if you're in college or university, that's like a great opportunity, because a lot of these programs are already set up for you and you really don't have to do anything else than to apply and then like, go there and of course have a great experience there. The second part I wanted to address is people who aren't going to school or who are not in university anymore. Maybe they've already graduated, and if you want to just go live abroad. So usually when you live abroad, you're gonna have to find work, because you're gonna have to pay your bills. You're gonna have expenses, living costs, and all that stuff. So there's a lot of there's some programs now that are called it's called like work abroad programs, where you get a temporary working visa for another country of your choice, depending on the program, and that gives you a visa to work in that country for a certain amount of time. Sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's 12 months, sometimes it's only 3 months, but then once you get there it can be extended for a longer period of time. Now these kind of programs are obviously a bit more for the adventurous, risky people, because you'll often have to find, you'll probably have to find your own job once you're there. You're gonna have to find your own apartment, all that stuff. I don't know how it is with all countries. You're gonna have to do research on your own, on Google. That's a great resource. I know that in Canada there's a program called SWAP. The website is called swap.ca. I think it's called Student Work Abroad Program. For some of them you do have to be enrolled at a school, but some of them you don't. So that's a website that I personally know. For other countries I don't know, but a lot of countries do have temporary visas that you can get, especially if you're under a certain age. Like sometimes they'll be 30 years or age of younger. It'll be easier for you to get a visa, because they want to encourage these kind of like inter-country exchanges for people. And yeah, those ones are, I think, a bit harder, because you'll arrive in the country and you have to do everything yourself. You'll have to find a job just as you would in just as you would at home. You'd have to write resumes, and you have to find an apartment, be it with shared housing, a student accommodation, something like that. Now, I don't want to discourage people from doing that at all, but I think for those programs, you definitely need to be someone who's a little bit gutsy and a little bit more independent, because this is kind of what I did. When I finished high school, I graduated from high school in Canada, in Vancouver, and I decided to go traveling for a while. And I saved up, I paid for everything myself. My parents didn't pay for anything, which I wanted that. I wanted this to be something that I worked for myself. So I saved up money. I had a part-time job when I was in school, and I saved up all that money, put it into a bank account, and I went backpacking throughout Europe with my best friend at the time. And we just went backpacking. We had one of those like rail passes where you can take the trains all around Europe and stuff. And then at the end, when my money ran out, I was like, okay, well now I'm broke. So my choice was to either fly back home to Canada and just go back home, live there, work, whatever, and like enroll in university. And I didn't really want to do that, because for me it was just like I was already in Europe, and I just thought if I go home now, like it would be mid-session, like I hadn't applied to any schools and stuff, so I'd just be hanging around Vancouver working some crappy job, not doing really much of anything. So my friend, she flew back home, and I decided I wanted to stay. So I actually went to Switzerland, and that's kind of why, that's like the first time that I went to Switzerland to like work here. I went to Switzerland, and luckily for me, I did have family there. Not close, I mean, they're relatives, but I wasn't like super close to them, because I was living in Canada the whole time. But I stayed with my grandparents, so at least I had a place to stay for a while I was looking for a job. And I think I stayed at my grandparents' house maybe for about 2 weeks or so. So I had accommodation for me that I didn't have to pay for anything, so that was great. I didn't have to pay for a hotel and stuff. But basically during that time I was looking for a job, and what I just did is I was really young back then. How old was I? I was 18 years old. Had pretty much no good, I had a part-time job in Canada when I was at school, but they were just like part-time jobs, because I was going to school full-time as a high school student. So I didn't have much work experience, I didn't have any vocational training. in anything really. So, and because I arrived in Switzerland like in December. So basically what I tried to look for is I wanted to look for a job in a hotel, because in that sector, in like the hospitality sector, there's often jobs that are seasonal, where you are employed at a hotel doing something, either room service or whatever it is, you know, cleaning rooms or working in the hotel bar and stuff like that. There's a lot of jobs like that where it's not really skilled labor. You don't really have to have much training in that. I mean, those are kind of jobs that you kind of learn as you go, and they're not well paid, that's for sure. This isn't like a career move or something for me. They're not well paid, but they'll pay they'll pay most of your living expenses, because you can usually live either in the hotel or they have like accommodation for their staff, which is like very inexpensive. It's cheaper than renting like your own apartment, because you won't have any furniture and anything like that, right? So I was trying to look for a seasonal job. And these kind of jobs are often like, you know, hotels, depending on the location, go by seasons. So if you're going to like a tropical place, well, the season will probably run, you know, whenever all the tourism and stuff is. And I was actually going to like a winter resort where there's like skiing and stuff. So obviously the season started like in December, and then it goes until like after Easter sometimes, so April, something like that. So I was trying to look for a job there, but because I arrived in Switzerland so late, most of these hotels had already, you know, booked they'd already hired everyone, because the hotel is going to be opening like the next week or two. So most of the staff is hired like a couple months before the season starts. So when I arrived, it was already like the season was about to start within like 2 weeks. So a lot of the hotels that I sent out, I think I sent about 100 resumes out, but I got a couple callbacks, and I went to a couple interviews, and I got a job. So I got a job. That was my first kind of proper full-time job. I was 18, and I worked at a hotel in Switzerland as a waitress in like kind of an upscale restaurant, which was crazy for me, because I did have experience, like the part-time job that I had before was in the service sector or like hospitality sector, but you know, it wasn't like I didn't have any training as like a waitress and stuff. So yeah, I got a job there, and I was working there full time. My salary was really, looking back on that now, you know, because I had no idea how much people make in Switzerland. So compared to how much I would earn back then, like as a high school kid in Canada, I was like, wow, I'm earning so much money. But looking back on it now, like I just cannot believe how little they paid me, because it was just like ridiculous how little it is, because now I know how much Swiss salaries are. But, you know, for me, it was just, I was so young and I had like no experience, and I was just happy to be there and like not to have to go back to Vancouver. Obviously, I had some advantages. I had the advantage that I had the Swiss passport, so I didn't have to apply for a visa and all that. So these are things that I, you know, didn't have to do. I didn't have to apply for a visa. And the major other thing is the language. If you go to a country, let's say you want to go to another country to learn the language, like let's say you want to learn French, you want to go to France, or you know, other places where French are spoken. If you don't know any part of the language, like if you have zero language skills, it's going to be really hard for you to find a job. Well, you might find a job, but it won't be dealing with the public. You'll probably get a job somewhere in the back, either washing dishes or cleaning rooms and stuff like that. But I'm not trying to discourage you to do that, because a friend of mine, she actually did that. She wanted to learn English, and she went to Banff, kind of the same thing. She had the crappiest job. She was working like as a chambermaid, or kind of like cleaning up hotel rooms. So she had a crappy job, crappy wage, but her living expenses were paid for. And she went there to learn English. So, you know, she was integrated there into the place where she worked, and her other co-workers and stuff were Canadians. So she learned English. So in a way, you have to kind of see it from that aspect. Don't think of this as like a career move. Like, you know, if you're going to a country and you have very poor language skills, well, you're probably going to get a crappy, low-paying job, you know. But you have to look at the bigger picture. This is only a certain amount of time in your life, and the point is not for you to go there and get rich, right? The point for you to go there is to have the experience of learning another culture, and like, you know, getting to know the locals and learning the language if you don't have any language skills, and just to broaden your horizons. You know, you can always go to university. You know, after high school, you don't have to go to university right away. I'm just, that's like a lot of people do that. They think, okay, high school's over, apply to university, go there, after university, get a job, and that's kind of their, you know, their life plan. But I just want to encourage you that you don't have to do that. You know, you can still go to university, but, you know, maybe after high school or even during college or something, take a year off and do something like that, because it'll totally enrich your life, and it looks good on a resume too. If you have had, like, let's say later on in life and you're working in marketing or you're working in something, and you can say, oh, look, you know, I was 18 years old, or I was 19 years old, 20 years old, and I went abroad and lived there for a year and learned a new language and, you know, integrated. That's a big bonus for a lot of employers now, especially nowadays in the economy, where you'll get a job where you have to travel, or you might have to relocate to another country, and you have already had that experience at a very young age. That's going to be a huge plus point for you. So, you know, don't think of it as you're just wasting your time just bumming around. It's totally not. Now, I don't want to romanticize the whole thing, because definitely when you go abroad to a foreign country, you're gonna have definite low points in that period. You know, or let's say you're going abroad to teach English in Japan, or whatever it is you do, or you go with the Peace Corps, or you're going to volunteer in Africa with some kind of NGO or something. There's gonna be periods in that time when you're away where you're fallen like down way to the bottom, and you're just super depressed, and you get, you know, there might be periods where you're extremely homesick, or you're extremely lonely because it's hard sometimes to meet people and stuff. And so that's all part of it. You know, it's not just like one big happy party. I mean, a lot of the experiences are positive that you'll have, but, you know, just be sure to expect that there's going to be periods of time in your time away from home that you're not going to be so happy. You're going to be probably upset about something, or it's going to be maybe frustrating for you to find a good job, or you're going to maybe have problems with your employer, or you're going to miss your friends, or you're going to have a hard time meeting people and stuff like that. So that's something that you can kind of keep in the back of your mind, that it's not always going to be rosy and perfect, but that's kind of all part of the whole experience, and that's going to definitely develop you as a person, like, because there's going to be obstacles in your way, and you're going to have to find ways how to overcome those obstacles by yourself independently. And for me, that definitely changed completely who I was, because, you know, when I was back in Vancouver, living at home, I lived quite a, you know, privileged life. So I think when I was the first time on my own, I had to deal with all these things. You know, I had to the first time file my own taxes. I had to you know, find a job like in another country where I had no idea how the whole job situation was and stuff. And I think that has completely, how can I say, like, that has just completely enriched me personally and my character, and it's kind of made me who I am now. Of course, when you go abroad, you will have to think about the financial aspect. You're going to either, you know, if you're going to a country, let's say you want to go teach English in Japan, or, you know, you want to find a job somewhere in Europe or whatever it may be, you're going to have some kind of savings, so that when you get to the country, if you don't have a job already set up for you, because it might be kind of hard to find a job when you're that far away, especially for these kind of like lower income jobs. You know, no one will probably hire you for those jobs if you're like in another country. I mean, they might, but maybe for some of these teaching positions they might. You're gonna have to have money to live on while you're looking for a job. So what you can either do is stay, if you have relatives, or if you have friends of friends or something, you can maybe couch surf and stay there, because if you're young like I was, you're not gonna have a lot of money, obviously. But I definitely recommend to save money up before you go. And if you are planning to do this like out of high school, I mean, I was very young to do this. I was like 18 when I went abroad and lived by myself and had my own job and everything. So that's like, I think, pretty young to do that. I was ready for it, but a lot of, I think, 18-year-olds probably won't be. If you are planning to do this, maybe to take a year off from college or something, to do like a gap year, get a part-time job while you're doing your studies or whatever, and just save that money. Just try and put that to the side if you can. I mean, traveling and all that is definitely a luxury, but I think anyone can do it, because you know, you can always save your money. Just don't buy a lot of stuff, save it up, and eventually you will get to that point where you will have enough money. People might say, oh, not everyone can afford it, but you know, I had a crappy paying job. I had like a $7 an hour job in Vancouver, you know, so I wasn't earning a lot of money and somehow I managed to do it, so why can't other people? So yeah, I think I don't know what else I can really say about traveling abroad, only that it's an amazing experience. If you have the opportunity to do it, I would definitely do it. You know, I think you have the rest of your life to be at home in your own country and get married and have kids and get a high paying job and stuff, but try to do this when you're young, because I think when you're younger you don't have so many responsibilities. You know, you don't have a mortgage to pay off, you don't have kids, you don't have a car payment to pay off, and all these things. So I think that for me that was the best time, because I had nothing. I had no apartment, I had no responsibilities, so that's why I decided to do it straight out of high school. But you know, you can still definitely do this if you're going to college or something, or if you're just bumming around at home in your hometown and you know you're not doing much. Maybe you're just working but you're not doing that. You know, try and save that money that you're working, save it up, and then do something like either go traveling or study abroad or learn a new language and stuff like that. One last thing I wanted to mention is, especially for those people who want to go abroad to learn a language, the only advice I can give you is to immerse yourself in that language, in the sense that meet local people. And if you're going, let's say, to Spain or whatever to learn Spanish, or to Mexico or whatever to learn Spanish, you know, and if you take language classes there, that's great. But what happens is that usually in these kind of language classes, you'll be thrown amongst all these other foreigners who often speak English or who speak your local language. So you become friends with these people, and then you only speak that language with them. So if you're going abroad to learn a language and you're taking language classes somewhere, I would definitely either try to join some kind of like local extracurricular activity, if it's like, you know, doing some kind of a fitness class, or you know, doing a local handicrafts class or something like that, to meet local people, because that's the best way that you're going to be able to practice the language. Because definitely in these like language programs where you're put with other students, you'll often end up only speaking your own language, and really only speaking the language you're actually trying to learn in those couple hours a day where you have your where you have the school, right? So you know, even if you're going to like whatever country, try and meet locals, because that's the best way to integrate yourself into that society. You're gonna have like the most experience that way, because you're going to meet, you know, the local culture. You're going to be invited to people's houses and stuff. And for me, I think that's what made the big difference when I came to Switzerland. You know, I didn't know anybody. Like when I started my job, you know, it was far away from where my relatives lived, so I didn't really even see them, and I didn't know anybody. Like I was there totally on my own, and I met local people, and some of the people that I worked with I became very good friends with, and you know, went out partying with them and stuff. And that's how I began to integrate myself into life in Switzerland, and that's kind of why I ended up, you know, coming back here. And like my boyfriend, I met my boyfriend here and stuff, and yeah, I just kind of began to integrate myself into the actual life here. And I think the language issue, of course, was the biggest plus point for me, because I spoke German. So, you know, if you even if you have like very elementary speaking skills, you can vastly improve your speaking skills by meeting locals and by like being forced to speak their language, right? So yeah, that's pretty much everything that I can tell you of my own experience of living and like moving abroad. And just, there's so many different options out there what you can do. You can study, you can learn a language, you can volunteer in developing countries, you can go join the Peace Corps if you want to do that for 2 years. There's so many opportunities now, and they're just out there, so why not take advantage, right? So I hope that was helpful to some of you. That was just interesting for you guys maybe to learn about my own experiences and stuff. And I'll see you later. Bye!